EU, there was major confluence around this buy today on EU. Right, so I'm gonna do just essentially just a top-down analysis. So nonetheless, EU had ran a major catalyst in the market here, right? And this is actually a monthly low, bow back, so a monthly low. So obviously major liquidity being under this low, watchers just monitoring price at highs and lows from a liquidity standpoint. So zoom in from there. Also just keeping in mind as far as like the daily cycle. In a lot of my videos, I do mention the daily cycle, but in this case here, thinking that this is the last day of the month. So the month is technically closing. So last week, potentially actually printing the low of the month. Now diving in this to an intraday perspective and just seeing how everything is fractal. So essentially, the market being fractal, applying the same liquidity concepts from the monthly down to an intraday perspective, right? So as we can see here, we had a daily low in which price then sweeps. Now let's talk about the timing of this in particular. In this case, you had your Asia range. We zoom into just the M5. Zoom into the M5. Frankfurt then comes and runs this New York previous day low. London sweeps Frankfurt liquidity. Now timing is in favor for then London to then create the daily low. Only keeping in mind as the forms of liquidity that price has essentially ran. And this was Friday, the previous week Friday. So essentially this was the day closing last week's candle, right? So perfect timing for London to then create that daily low. You get a nice impulsive move to the upside, some corrective behavior, nice mitigation, and impulse move during New York. Now, what primarily influenced buys today for me during New York, alongside that, is this reaction here at the top of this catalyst here. And if we can look left, and see that, yes, New York did run the liquidity being fractal and things, and I use sessions and things of that nature to understand liquidity from an intraday standpoint and just also the daily cycle. But seeing here how New York obviously sweeps this catalyst here of this London liquidity, and then the day essentially closes. So this day is essentially over, but nonetheless, if I look left from here, I can see how New York essentially did not mitigate anything, right? So for me, that's just more confluences. This essentially been an upside target for the beginning of the week. Now, as the beginning of the week comes in, we get a nice sweep of some New York inducement here, which I love to see. It's a prime setup here. All right, we get a nice sweep of some New York inducements. Asia then trades away. Get this nice just reaction here, which is just more confluence of price essentially going to the upside. However, in particular, things were just a little bit different. London then comes in here, trades up, mitigates off of this supply zone, right? So the one thing I like about this reaction is we can see how the market essentially creates intention. Everything essentially has intention, right? The only intention of this mitigation here, of this supply variation here, was to only go create a higher low here, right? And then nonetheless, just to sum this up, this essentially could have been a point of interest too that you could have potentially taken two, would have got stopped out. But nonetheless, hey, that's just a part of taking a risk in the game. This was your ultimate extreme. And nonetheless, EU trades away. And then an easy upside target from here. That first easy upside target from here. Obviously, you have a lot of inefficiency here, but my very first TP from here would be this Asia liquidity here. As we can see, price has just ran. Flowing with price, right? Acknowledging the liquidity being ran, acknowledging where you are in price, using the daily cycle alongside the daily cycle, weekly cycle, and monthly cycle. Just realize that they're all fractal, right? So in this case, we had just ran a monthly low, right? Ran a monthly low at the end of a weekly cycle. So, and then essentially this day closing the week, right? So everything being fractal, and then you can apply that same concept down to an intraday perspective and things of that nature. So really dope video, really dope case study on EU. Hope this was useful. We'll chop it up on the next one.